There are 3 daily habits that are destroying your memories, and you will lose 10% of your brain by the age of 55 and 20% of your brain by the age of 75. It'll actually shrink if you do not do something about this. There is a free workshop that you can partake in where you'll learn what these 3 habits are, how to fix it, and how to regain your memories. There's a link below in the description on how to sign up. Be sure to sign up. It's free information.
Okay, so what did the FDA, you've had a long 9 years. I mean, imagine if they didn't shut you down and they let this product go. I mean, it'd go viral and everybody would have it and there would be so many less children with autism. Okay, now, what did they do through this process with you? And I know you talked to some attorneys and just an amazing story. Can you share some of this with us?
The FDA has not really contacted us hardly at all. They gave us a letter telling us we had to stop marketing it. They sent an agent that came there and was there about 9 different days going through all of our files and everything. And when they found out I did everything by the book, I hired a good lawyer who used to work for the FDA. He was one of their head lawyers to set it up so I wouldn't break any rules and do it right. And so they just came in and confiscated, had the state of Kentucky health agency or somebody like that come in with them. And they took all of our products, so we had no product to sell out anymore. And they made us try to recover all that was out there, but people wouldn't give it up.
Well, no way. I'm a parent, and I had an autistic kid, and this was helping. I'd tell you where to go. I don't care if I'm breaking the law for my children. I'm Mama Bear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there are a lot of American women like you, and that's the reason I made the compound. I could not get away from the American mothers.
Yeah, Mama Bear's out there saying, get out of my way. There is nothing that's going to stop us from taking care of our children.
And they were pleading for someone to believe them. And, you know, I grew up. I'm an old guy. I never knew I never knew what the first time I heard about autism was in Rain Man, a movie with an autistic guy, Dustin Hoffman. And anyway, I never met an autistic one. Yet the first autistic report I had was I had a secretary when I was in the cancer center, and she was telling me she had a young child that he was having learning problems and he was autistic. They thought he was autistic. And I said, well, what is that? And, you know, medical doctors I talked to, this is a new disease. And you know, and it is very damning of the United States government and the health agencies that they can't decide what caused this huge increase in autism. And if they say it's because they can diagnose it better, you have to be an idiot to believe that. I mean, you missing an autistic child and his behavior and his look is like missing a train wreck that you go by. I mean, you can't miss it.
This is especially the extremely autistic. Now, what did your lawyer tell you during that process? Because you had a really good case, and there was a lot there.
His comment to me was, Dr. Haley, if I take your case, I'll win it. You're right. Your compound should be a dietary antioxidant, and you haven't made any false claims. Other people made the claims, and you know, I can't help what other people say. He says, and I'll win. It'll take a year. It'll cost you $1 million. And in that year, the FDA is going to raid your laboratory, take all your equipment. And when we get you free of this, and they're going to accuse you of something else. He said, I would suggest you just do what they say. Unless you have $1 million you can put into it. And I didn't have $1 million.
And it's too bad, because I bet you there's a lot of people with children with that disease who would give $5 a piece, easily raise $1 million, and we could go if it had enough publicity. Now, what have you done since? Are you trying, because Donald Trump has taught, you know, the new legislation saying you should at least be able to try. Let's get rid of this crap of not, you know, mandating what people have to do and give them the ability to try. Now, is that affecting you and what you're doing?
It certainly may, but I can tell you what we've done. If you go to the FDA, and I already had a lot of it done because I was testing the compound to put it on the market as a drug in case they ever decided that I had to. I always had this feeling, because I had an FDA guy advising me. He said, what you're doing is totally legal, but the FDA, if you start curing illnesses like you think you are, they're going to come after you. I mean, that was an FDA guy telling me that.
How dare you cure illnesses? We'll let you go if you don't cure anything. Even if you mildly cause problems, we don't care. But if you're curing people, how dare you?
Yeah. Well, anyway, what I did is we talked, and actually it was the members of the International Academy of Oral and Medical Toxicology. That is a group of dentists that is anti-American Dental Association theory about mercury toxicity from amalgam fillings. There were people in there that took the compound, we called it OSR, and one of the major investors in my company is Dr. David Kennedy, and he had a beautiful wife. Everybody loved her. Her name was Betty, but Betty had a condition that looked like she had Parkinson's. I don't know what the medical condition was, but she, her hands were always moving, her head was moving, and she took it, and within a couple months, taking a low level without any other, she lost her tremor and lost her thing. And there were a lot of people, including myself. My family have a thing we call the Haley shakes. We have, when we get older, we kind of develop a tremor. And when I took OSR, my tremor, because I drink too much coffee too, I'm not a good comparison, I don't think, because of my love of caffeine. But I have very steady hand. I don't have any tremor at all. And we saw a lot of people lose their tremor. And we also saw people that were kind of gray. Their face was kind of gray, like they didn't get enough blood. When they take the OSR, all of a sudden they would turn pink and they would be breathing and they would claim it made them feel better. Well, anyway, several of those people would invest in my compound because they think they're mercury toxic because of taking out dental amalgams and placing them over their career. So they wanted to have something that was safe to do it, and they listened to my talk, and I told my ideas. And so we started out with small tranches. There was Catherine and Harvey Waxman were two people in New York. He was he's a lawyer, but he was a brain surgeon who lost his ability to do brain surgery because of a tremor he developed. And anyway, they helped me get started. And when I called them up and I said, I found a compound that is totally without toxicity in rats and totally prevents the rats from responding to lethal doses of mercury. I mean, it saves them. And that was the research that I went off. I first of all, I'm not going to give something out that's toxic. So we took rats in my laboratory and injected them, and this was in a small company, not in the University of Kentucky. We did this in we called it the chelation technologies, and I would inject toxic mercury, levels of mercury, under the flap of the abdominal area on the left side. That was and I put this compound in there at 100 micromoles per kilogram, 200, 300, 400, and then I kept going up, and I kept looking at these rats. And what I noticed that the rats that were getting the most of the NBMI, we call them show rats. They did more grooming. Their coats were more shiny, whereas the rats that didn't get it stayed kind of a light yellow color. But we couldn't give them enough to kill them. I mean, it was getting silly. I mean, we went up to 1,200 micromoles, which is a lot, more than you'd ever give anybody for chelation. And the rats never lost weight, never acted sick, were as healthy as the controls, if not more healthy. So then when we realized we had a compound that was really known to be a very potent mercury and lead and iron and cadmium chelated all the toxic metals, we then decided, let's see if it will protect these rats from mercury toxicity. So we injected, start out with one lethal dose of mercury, enough to kill the rats on one side, and then on the other side, after 20 minutes, we put in the compound. This is all published, by the way, let's see what happened. Well, the rats that got 1 and 2 times the lethal dose were all dead within a few days. If we gave them our compound at an excess one time, they never died. So then we went to 14 times the lethal dose. And I'm serious. I mean, I did these experiments with my graduate student, myself. I injected it in the rats, and the rats could not move after about 3 or 4 seconds of that mercury getting in their body. They would just sit there, and then they would go into convulsions. And I thought they were all going to die. But we still waited 20 minutes, and then we put 17-fold excess of the compound on the other side, injected it so no one could say we didn't get it in or we got in too much. And the next morning when I came in, the rats that got the 14 times the lethal dose, all of those that weren't treated were dead. They were all dead within 6 to 12 hours. The ones that got the NBMI were all alive. And they were alive, all of them were alive for 4 days, and at the end of 4 days, with no other treatment, 3 of them died. But the other 7 lived for a long, long time, for months. We kept them around for months to see if they would develop cancer or lose their hair or whatever. And there was no, they just
Wow.
gained weight and they lived. And so we published that. And and with that, we have modeled our system. We had third-party laboratories, like MB Research in Pennsylvania, used our compound and gave it at the rate of 1,000 milligrams per kilogram body weight for 28 straight days, and did not have a single toxic side effect, no deaths, no disability, no weight loss, nothing. There were no negative aspects of way over treating at 1,500 and 100 milligrams per kilogram body weight. And so we knew we had something that was safe and something that was effective against mercury toxicity. And also, we sent it off to Brunswick Laboratories to have it tested as an antioxidant. There's nothing that I know of that even comes close to this compound with its what they call ORAC score, oxygen radical absorbance capacity. This compound soaks up hydroxy free radicals like a sieve. I mean, like a sponge. And and that's what we've seen. That's the reason it increases the glutathione levels. I mean, I have taken this compound personally. I took it for several years before I ever, almost 2 years before I ever gave it to anybody to give to a child. Because I want to see, did it cause your vision to go bad, or did it give you headaches? Did it make you act strange? And it does. I mean, and it didn't with the rats, and it didn't with me. And
So what is in the compound? You said it's food. What is can people just eat some food? Or is it has to be extracted from the food?
No, this compound is synthesized from 2 components that are in the diet of about everyone. I mean, the benzoate and cysteamine. Cysteamine is a breakdown product of cysteine, a common amino acid. But what the compound does, because of its structure and its formation, and this gets into heavy chemistry, when it binds a heavy metal like mercury, it renders it non-toxic. It renders it non-chemically reactive and causes it to precipitate out of water. It's an insoluble compound that you can't get that mercury to come off without heating it to a huge high level such that you break the structure of the molecule. The molecule works not by taking the metal out of your body, but by chelating it into an inert complex, which your body gets rid of slowly by the P450, a normal detox system, like it gets rid of benzene in your body. So it just eliminates, and it does this when you take it orally. It peaks in your plasma within 2 hours. It peaks in all tissues of rats given it the same way, and it gets inside the blood-brain barrier, it gets inside brain, gets inside the liver, the kidney, bone marrow. And so the compound is very hydrophobic, just like mercury vapor. It was part of the idea behind it, getting something hydrophobic that'll go where it wants to in the body, like benzene would. And
you need it to get in between the blood-brain barrier because a lot of that's in there, and that's what's causing these Alzheimer's, what's causing autism, and you need it to take it out of your brain area.
But if you take someone, for example, my theory is if someone is mercury toxic, they cause dementia and oxidative stress. Mercury cannot generate hydroxy free radicals. It cannot itself cause oxidative stress, but it displaces iron from its iron binding sites. So you not only have the mercury binding and inhibiting the action of the enzymes or the pathways that require free iron bound to them, but it also displaces that iron, and that iron through the Fitton reaction can generate hydroxy free radicals, and it slowly builds up as you breathe more mercury vapor, more mercury gets in your brain. You get more free iron in your brain with time, and this is now what people believe causes Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. It's an increase in unbound iron in your brain, and I would tell you there's no way that you eat iron and get it into your brain without it going through the normal biological process, because your body has developed very, very tight procedures to make sure you don't have free iron, because free iron is incredibly toxic.
So now where are they getting the free iron? From the vaccines?
No, they're getting mercury from the vaccines.
But what are they getting? How are they getting the iron? So the iron's a different problem. The iron is not causing.
The iron is sitting there. It's sitting there, say, bound in this site doing its job. Doing
Okay,
what,
I see.
and then iron like sulfur. I mean, they're called iron sulfur centers in the mitochondria where most of the iron in your body is bound. Now, when you bring in a mercury vapor that goes through the blood-brain barrier very easy because it's very inside, it's very penetratable. The mercury gets inside your brain, and then it gets oxidized by an enzyme similar to catalase, and that converts Hg0 to H, which is non-toxic, non-reactive, to Hg2 plus, which is very reactive and very toxic. The toxicity of mercury is caused by the fact that it binds to sulfur groups in your body. Everybody agrees with that. And when it binds to some sulfurs, it displaces the iron that used to be there.
Oh, and then the irons unbind, and then that's what is okay.
They call
You
it
said that earlier.
Yeah, and it's that unbound iron that causes the oxidative stress, and this is working. I mean, we've had, and this, again, it's not done by me, but there are people being treated in clinics in Switzerland, with what they call atypical Parkinson's, which is a very lethal form of that disease, that were paralyzed, that are now getting better.
That's just so incredible. Okay, so now with all those great results, do you see your ability to be able to put this out onto the market ever? I mean, where do you see that path?
It will have to be someplace. I mean, like they're doing in New Zealand.
Another country, which I actually might be able to get you into a couple countries, which I would really like to talk to you about.
Okay, well, I mean, the thing is, anybody can get it now. I was going to go back. We did all the animal studies, all the mutagenic studies, all the toxicity studies, all of the particle size studies that are required by the FDA, and they're good. I mean, I don't object to doing that if I had a drug that was all toxic. So we're doing everything to show why it isn't toxic when we already know it's not. And so we did all those studies, and then we were allowed, because we could show that the compound was not toxic to rats, mini pigs, dogs, rabbits. I can't remember everything we had to do it with, or did do it with. And so then they allowed us to do a phase 1 study with humans. And that's volunteers with people in Sweden. It was done in Sweden. And people took NBMI, and they would follow them. And we started out very low, and they have all their safety regulations to make sure we don't hurt anyone. And what they did, we did what's called phase 1, which is safety and pharmacokinetics. They give the patient the compound, and they follow them, their blood pressure, their health, and everything, and they keep increasing it. And they found out, giving people 2 weeks at 600 milligrams a day, there was absolutely no adverse toxic effects in these patients. And so that is the safety and pharmacokinetics. When you get a phase 1 done, then certain people in certain countries allow you to use that as an experimental drug. You can get permission to use this. In the United States, they call it for compassionate use through the FDA. In Europe, they call it single patient application. And that's what the Swiss, because I gave a lot of talks in Geneva, they were well aware of what I was doing and what my theories were and what my data was. And so the Swiss started using this in their clinics quite a bit. We've treated over 40 people. Swiss clinics have gotten the drug from our Irish company at the approval of their country's medical authority to go use this. And so right now you can go to Germany and a medical doctor can order this for you. I mean, he doesn't have to go through a regulatory aspect. In Switzerland, they still have to get permission. In New Zealand, the doctors can just order it for you. And those people are using it, from what I hear, very effectively.
Okay, so now how it works for Alzheimer's, it's working for shakes and Parkinson's.
I didn't say it worked for Alzheimer's. We were doing a study on Alzheimer's when they shut it down. But we do know it has. We have seen 2 people with atypical Parkinson's that were in very bad shape, wheelchair bound, that showed dramatic improvement with the compound. Now, how long it lasts and how well it works, I mean, that's the indication today. But that's not a clinical trial. I mean, that's in a value of 2. And so
how about autism? Now, you've had thousands of people. Now, how old is the child? Is it any age that they're seeing benefits? Like, let's say an adult who's 35 takes it.
Yeah, well, there are people that are that old that are taking it. It seems to help. It seems to help with their gut issues. What I can say is a general observation: the younger the child, when they took the OSR, the more effective it was.
That makes sense. Less damage to the brain.
Yeah, because
Catch it sooner.
When you take OSR, I mean, it stops the toxicity, but it doesn't repair all the neurological damage. And if you can catch that at the right time when the body can repair it, I think you're in better shape. That's my theory.
I've heard that theory from other people who are working on this too.
Yeah,
that's excellent.
I think that has to be done. But I mean, right now, you know, I mean, I have to be very careful what I say. I'll be very honest. The FDA can shut me down anytime they think I'm postulating using this for an unapproved source, and so I can't make any comments about what I think it would do with autism in reality, because I'm chairman of the chairman of our board and president of the company here. So.
Now, do you sell your product to Switzerland and New Zealand and so forth? Is that coming through you?
Well, yes, it is, but it's not. But you got to understand, each country has a different rule. We have to charge a certain amount. We have to buy insurance. We have to pay mail, and this is what we're allowed to do. We're not in most countries. We're not allowed to charge for the product. But this is something that.
How do you make money then?
We don't. We don't.
Well, but how can they say you can't charge for the product? I mean, how do you pay for the product? I mean, because it costs you. It doesn't make sense.
Well, we have investors that have put money in the company that have allowed us to make a stockpile of this to get it encapsulated, etc. But they can say this just by saying it. I mean, a country's medical authority can tell you if you can or cannot charge for it.
Well, okay, but keep going.
Well, in some countries you can't charge for it. Most countries you can't.
Well, if you can't charge, how can you even? Now if you can't charge for it, that completely shuts down their whole medical. They must have. You can't do it.
No, but
you have to at least charge the cost of it and enough for whatever cost it takes to just be able to do it.
Well, that's handled by our vice president for research. But I can tell you that he has told me that we can't go out and tell people come and buy this and get it on an IND and we can sell it and we can afford to do that. If we keep doing it that way, we'll go broke. But what it does do, I mean, for example, when they had a positive response for any disease in New Zealand or in Switzerland, it helps us. I mean, it helps us with arguments with the FDA and with the EMA.
For you, it's like a case study.
Yeah, it
makes sense.
And some people will lie to do that, but it's not a way you make money. I mean, my goodness. I mean, if we can make huge amounts of it and sell it to people, but we're paying more for insurance. We pay, one time it was over 100 euros per sample we sent out, for a study, insurance.
God, they make it so hard for you. Okay, so how much does it cost to produce this?
Well, I mean, a lot, but it's not, I don't want to complain. I'm not going to complain about that.
Per dosage, like per person kind of thing. Is it, I mean, it's a lot for a lot of dosages, but I mean, are we talking $100 a dose, something like that?
Well, oh no, I mean, and I don't have the exact math, but because of what I will tell you, when you're making it and sending it out to be tested, you have to follow FDA and EMA guidelines, and they will tell me I can make. First of all, I have to make a batch of 500 or 600 grams, which is not very much, and I have to have that tested. And if that works out, then I can step it up to 5 kilograms, 5,000 grams. And I can do that for 3 things. And I have to show I can make 3 5-kilogram batches. And I'm paraphrasing this. So this is not exactly, I hope no one thinks that I'm trying to say I know FDA regulations. But we can make 3 5,000 kilogram batches, which we can use for testing in animals. The dog tests were done with one of those batches. And the phase 1 was done with one of those batches. And then we can step up. We can go up 10 times higher. So we did a 65 kilogram batch, which we can now use for other studies, rat studies, etc. And then we can also use that for the phase 1, and we can use that if when we reach the point, you have to do more than just that. You have to have an approval we can use that for compassionate use if somebody pushes us on it. And we can do other studies, like we have done we're doing right now a phase 2 on atypical Parkinson's in Europe. And we've finished a phase 2 on COPD. This compound is in our hands with people that were ambulatory with COPD had a phenomenal effect.
But how expensive would a dose like that be then? I mean, the costs are all this cost that the government makes you put into it, but
Yeah. Well,
is the actual base ingredients and the things that expensive?
no, they're
Okay.
not. If you remember, when we sold it as OSR as a dietary antioxidant, we sold, I think it ended up being 30 capsules of 100 milligrams each. And we sold that to the doctors. We only sold it to doctors and dentists who could keep track of the patient when we first started, because we wanted to make sure we didn't hurt anybody. And we did that. We sold it to them, I think, for somewhere between 30 and they would charge $65 a month.
Okay, so it was a really reasonable deal. So how do they treat other pharmaceutical companies? Do they put them under that same strict protocol?
I think so. I think it's their general rules. One size fits all. You see, and they're right about many of these things. But when you have something like NBMI that was sold for 2 years without a single adverse effect as a dietary supplement, in all the rat animal studies, no significant adverse effects if you kept it, especially in the range of where we're giving. I mean, we could give 1,000 milligrams per kilogram, whereas if we give a 100 milligram or a 200 or 600 milligram person to someone who weighs 65 kilograms, you see it's down under 10 milligrams. So we're way below the level that we ever gave to an animal and never saw any toxic effects. And then you show it's safe in humans. And then when you want to start it, you want to get it out for people, because the FDA and the pharmaceutical companies really do limited studies. They can't. They can make you do big studies and charge you hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to do it, where in reality, you really find out when a drug's safe is when you get it in the hands of medical doctors who have very close contact with each individual patient they give it to. I mean, if you look on TV today, I mean, there are all these anti-blood clotting medicines and other things that are where people are suing them. They said they were safe. Well, then why did they cause people to bleed to death? I mean,
so whereas yours really did show, I mean, you have enough out there. Now, why do you think, are they just idiots following a broken system, or good people following a broken, or is it greed? Is there greed at the higher level that's causing, they don't want something that works because there's too much money to be made on fixing, sick people?
And I would suggest you ask President Trump what they found out when they looked at it. Why are they doing what they're doing now? I don't know. I mean, I can say there's, obviously, my opinion is there are a lot of good people. Most of the people that work for the FDA and the CDC, I think, are good, honest Americans. I do think at the top regulatory, especially the political appointees coming into those situations, like the commissioner of the FDA, who's appointed by the president, and the people appointed to be the CDC that come from industry, they may be very sympathetic to the industry viewpoint and may want to protect their investment. And you see, there was an article released not too long ago from Goldman Sachs, where they made a presentation to a medical group. And the basis of the presentation was that curing the disease was not a workable business model if you're developing a drug. If you make a drug that cures a disease, you're going to go broke.
Where did you see that?
It was on Robert Kennedy's Mercury project thing, and but it was prepared by Goldman Sachs. And
excellent. If you have a copy of that, I'd love to have that as a link for my patrons or for my listeners.
But I think if you go to the World Mercury Project, that's where I read it.
Okay. And then do you also have a link for your research? I'd love for listeners to be able to see that, some of your research.
Well, we have a website and what we're doing, but we don't talk about all the research because, we walk that fine line where we're promoting the use of a drug that's not approved. And so we kept our website very, very simple and very straightforward, and we were going to do it because we thought when they saw all the animal data that the EMA would say you should be able to, and the fact on the human safety, that this would be something that would be worthwhile to treat people who think they're mercury toxic. Do you understand? The European Medicine Agency told us straight to our faces there are no mercury toxic people in Europe. Go to South America if you want to test this on somebody that's mercury toxic. And we did. We went to Ecuador and treated mercury toxic miners.
And they got better.
The ones that got treated, 7 out of 8 lost their workplace tremors. All of them that had excess salivation indicating mercury toxicity lost their excess salivation. The people on the chronic, we call it the physical and mental fatigue, the scores improved dramatically. And when we looked at the urinary mercury levels in 10 of 11 we gave that highest dose of NBMI, they dropped down dramatically. Only one went up, and it went up 0.8 of a microgram, which was noise level. So, no, we had very positive, but it was not done to be statistically significant. It was a fact, an indication finding study, but it wasn't enough to say that it is pivotal, where you can approve it. But, with everything else they've seen and from the animal studies, where do you find the mercury toxic clinic? A clinic, I mean, you can't find them. I mean, so we have to do an efficacy study on a population that the FDA and the EMA says doesn't exist.
Well, we really have some issues in this country, and the levels of autism is skyrocketing. Alzheimer's is growing. And when you have something that has some really positive results, especially with autism, which is what you're saying, it's unethical to the extreme not to look into this and make it available for these poor families everywhere across the United States and world. It's absolutely criminal. But
I mean, it's not just that. I mean, if you look at what they call the National Health and Nutritional Evaluation Survey, the NHANES study, look at that and see what they say about the level of mercury and toxic metals that occur in the human population as they age. I mean, it goes up dramatically.
It collects.
Yeah, and the collection has increased dramatically, according to a paper from UCLA.
Why is it increasing dramatically? Where are we getting this extra mercury?
Well, I honestly don't know, but it's not from the dental amalgams or from the vaccines, maybe. They say it's coming over on the Mongolian flume, which collects the mercury that's being released by coal-fired power plants in India, China, Indonesia, and places like that. That goes up in the Mongolian flume and comes across Alaska and goes down the west coast of America. When I was a younger person, I should say, in Wyoming, I loved to fly fish, and I loved the Wyoming mountains, and I would go up there and catch fresh trout and eat them. And now there's a fish advisory on them. There's no mercury produced in the United States or in Wyoming from the coal-fired power plants that would get up there. So where's it coming from? It's coming from our environment. And what we're going to have to do before we ever get to the point where we can clean up our environment, we got to protect the individual people. And that's what they're doing. I mean, the people in China are jumping all over. I mean, people in the United States are buying NBMI made by Chinese companies illegally off of the internet because they can't get it from me. And this is the aspect of regulations that drives you crazy. If I were to sell you some NBMI made under good manufacturing practices, drug controlled practices, that was totally safe, proven safe, the FDA could put me in jail and take away my company. But yet you could go to the website and go to a Chinese chemical company who's making this in a laboratory that's not at all drug approved, and they can sell it to you and make money at a high expense, and the FDA can't do a thing to them. And that's what they're doing.
Is the Chinese companies, are there good ones where people can buy it illegally?
I really don't know, but I would be surprised. I mean, the Chinese are very good chemists. I mean, I'm not trying to run Chinese down.
I know. I'm just wondering because people are desperate. I'm wondering if there's.
Well, the thing is, you don't know because there are so many things about making it. I mean, like we not only have to make sure that we get all the chloroform because that's made in chloroform or in some solvent that's toxic. You have to make sure you get rid of all of that. And that was a problem that we had to work out when we first started making it as OSR. And we worked that one out. The other thing you have to understand is a drug, we have to show the particle size. So if you make your drug in a big particle size, it's not absorbed as well. If you make it in the appropriate particle size, you make it too small, you can't put it in a capsule because it's too much like powdered sugar. It just blows everywhere. And so you have to get your drug approved of a known particle size. And I'm sure that the Chinese people making it aren't doing particle size or a polymorphism that might exist in the way they make it, polymorphic forms, which we have to do. So I don't know how safe it is. But are the Chinese capable of making it right? Yes, they are. Do they? I don't know.
Well, couldn't you partner with a lab in another country that could make it for you without the regulations that you're suffering through and get it to different parts of the world?
I wouldn't be able to sell it in the United States. We have this compound patented worldwide for COPD based upon research that we've done with the Swedish Department of Defense and a Dr. Ian Mudway at King's College in London. I mean, and the results when we had it as an oxidative stress, OSR, and I could legally give it, we had some tremendous results with people with COPD, older people. It was very effective. But that is not done clinically. The N value there wasn't enough to say we know for sure we did. We've done a phase 2 in Sweden that we should get the results back from that in July sometime. We do know we had no adverse effects, and we do know that some people in that study got amazingly well, and they were hospitalized. They were people that had lost 30 to 40% most likely of their lung function. But no, I mean, I can make it. I can go make it anywhere, but I can't bring it in the United States.
Well, it's just too bad. That's happening in a lot of cases. There's a Okinawas, I think, is in Bahama Islands. They're doing a lot of great things with using your fat cells and your own adult human stem cells to regrow tissue and getting people out of wheelchairs and things. I'm just thinking, that might be a really great place to manufacture some of this. And, it's pretty close to the United States if people at least have some access. Go ahead.
There are a lot of people that want the compound and want to sell it, and that aren't under FDA regulation. But that does not mean that they can bring it into the United States and sell it. They can't.
No, they have to sell it from the Bahama Islands, or they have to sell it in wherever they're at. Absolutely, they know they have rules they have to follow.
Well,
so it's too bad because we have a lot of suffering people in this country. I really hope the FDA can pull their head out of their behinds and do what's right for the people of this country, and that
I have hope with President Trump. I mean, I'm not a Trump admirer. His behavior is a turnoff for me in many cases, but I like everything he's done so far. I mean, I am so surprised and so at the good he's done. And
you got to look at actions, not just rhetoric. That's where I'm at right now, and I think that. I don't know. This is so important. This kind of stuff is so important.
This is an intellectual property that was developed in the Department of Chemistry at the University of Kentucky, and it could be very useful for the people in the United States. And I just think we need to go to a place where there are more state rights versus federal rights. For example, if the EMA makes a rule, they don't approve your drug, and you go through phase 1, Switzerland, Germany, and even the EU, we have treated 50 people in UK with this compound. I mean, one doctor has gotten loads of it and is evidently getting very good results. And we have treated at least 40 people in Switzerland. I don't know how many in Germany. And in Germany, it's just left up to the medical doctor to do that. In other words, the EMA cannot prevent different countries in Europe from, supporting the use of this compound. In the United States, the FDA can shut down and choose, from Alaska to Florida, and just say you can't use it, you can't have it, even though it's not toxic, you can't have it. And if you want to do it, you have to go through our IND. And with that, they have to have an IRB. An IRB for a single patient. I just got an email from a medical doctor who's trying to do that. It's going to cost them over $4,000 to set it up an IRB for him to get the right to apply to the FDA for us to give them the drug, which is going to cost them about $700 on insurance, mailing, shipping, etc. And so we have a real problem there.
Yeah, it goes from $30 to $65 to $800.
Well, no, to $4,000.
$4,000, okay, per dose or per bottle?
Well, no. When you go to try and set up an IRB, there are people that do that. You have to pay them thousands of dollars to review what you're doing. and that's for each patient that comes in. Uh,
Geez. Okay.
it's
Well,
it's it's again, they don't make a rule against it, but they make it such that it's economically not something somebody wants to do.
well,
Most people.
can you give people your website and some information on how maybe they can learn more about what you're doing and possibly, yeah.
The website is www.emeramed, EMERAMED.com. And in there we have the FDA documents that one has to fill out to get permission from the FDA. And the FDA, in their defense, has never turned us down one time on any application for doing this. But their rules are so restrictive and expensive that people just don't do it. I mean, like in Germany, the medical doctor, you can go to your medical doctor and say, hey, I've had 15 amalgam fillings all my life, and I think I'm mercury toxic, and the doctor can make the decision that, yeah, you probably are loaded with mercury. We should get this and the doctor can make that decision in a one-to-one basis with no other expense. But in the United States, you can't do that. I mean, you have to go through the FDA, and the FDA has to give the doctor has to go through the FDA, and the FDA has to give them approval. Then they have to follow the FDA rules for getting an IRB, and it gets expensive.
Well, this is an example of where we don't have freedom and where we're centralized ruling. It's a kind of a communist. That's what the FDA is set up like, a communist situation. It's very much like what a communist situation is.
They love regulations. I mean, they're over regulating, especially when you have a drug that has been shown to be totally safe.
Exactly.
Safe. Why are you sitting there regulating that? And it's not going to give you a high. It's not a drug that gives you a buzz.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's unethical. It's criminal.
Well, we need some changes, and maybe we can get them sometime. But the compound, all I can tell people is that we were doing phase 2 studies on very serious, and we found out kind of as an aside, and we've gone through and looked at it. I mean, like COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder, is the third leading cause of death in the world, medical death. And you say, well, what's a major risk factor? Smoking cigarettes. What cigarettes have in them? Cigarettes are loaded with cadmium. They put it in the cigarette paper to keep it from burning fast. And so people who smoke a lot take in a lot of cadmium, and that's a major risk factor for COPD in the United States. And what does NBMI do? It can get in there and it can bind two things: the cadmium that's in there that might be collected in your lung that's very toxic, and it can bind the iron that's released by the cadmium, displacing it. Just like mercury, cadmium and mercury behave in the same regard, except cadmium is not volatile in a gas like mercury. And so, there's a lot of research that needs to be done. And, and the other thing is, for us to get this approved in the United States, we have to do millions of dollars of research. Phase 3 studies, they call them, that cost more money than a company like mine could ever afford. But, why wouldn't you, since it's so safe, why would you want to do 3 years and $30 million worth of research when you could take 5 people that are ambulatory with COPD, and you measure their blood oxygen, you can tell they're not getting oxygen in their blood, and give them NBMI and see how it works. If it works well for 5, then do 10. And if it works well for those 10, then do 100. And they get it approved within a short period of time, because I had 2 brothers. I mean, this is emotional for me. I had 2 brothers that died with COPD. I mean, both of them were in wheelchairs with oxygen going in their lungs because of their inability to breathe and get enough blood oxygen. It is a horrible way to die. And I wish I could find a way to get it out to those people very quickly. And we have had people, older people in their 80s, take this compound. They had COPD and couldn't breathe, couldn't go to church, couldn't go to dinner or outside. And within 4 or 5 days, a lot of their obstruction was removed. And I don't know that it would work for everyone, but it works for a certain number of them. We know that. And so I mean, this is the disruptive part where I have a hard time sometimes sleeping at night when I get calls from people who are very sick, wanting me to break the law by providing them with OSR illegally. And yet, you sit there and you say, who is God going to judge? When I say, if I do this, I'm risking losing my company and the ability to ever get this out to a whole bunch of other people. I mean, to a lot of people that use it by trying to help one person. Same thing with autistic. I mean, I can't tell you how many emails I get a week. Parents of autistic children wanting me to help them because they've talked to someone like you did and found out that it worked. It's been a real stress in my life.
Well, if something happened to you, do you have this information that spread wide and far enough so that this science will be around no matter what?
Yes. The cat's out of the bag. And I tell the people, people I've talked to that I've tried to get to help me, you can either buy it from a company in the United States or you can be buying it from the Chinese. The cat is out of the bag. This compound is used effectively in New Zealand. There's a clinic there that has jumped on this, that knew about it, came to my talks, and I told them about it, and they can order it, just with a doctor's prescription. And they are getting outstanding results, and it hit the website the other day. One of the people who was really not a supporter of mine, who actually supported another way of treating autism, the Andy Cutler report approach, I think, and said she had been taking that treatment process that he tried to recommend, and she said he wasn't an admirer of mine. He wasn't. He and I had a fight. A chemical fight. He lost. But when she said she went there and she found 3 people that had been taking their treatment for 2 months that were in better shape than she was, and she'd been treating herself for 5 years, and that these people were much worse to start with than she was. And so she put that on her blog site, and that came around. Somebody sent it to me. So, it's out. The cat's out of the bag. There's no way you're going to keep people from using OSR or NBMI or EmeraMed or Ermanex, however you want to name the compound.
And they know what's in it, so if anything happens to you, there's...
Oh, yeah.
It's like, don't bother trying to take him out because this stuff is out there and it's not going to work. In fact, if they take you out, it'll probably be worse because then the message will go around like wildfire.
I don't say that somebody will try and shoot me.
My point is that it's safe.
Yeah. It's going. I have succeeded. And the thing that they have to understand is I don't care about the money. I had a good career as a university professor, and I don't want a chalet in France, and I don't want to buy a yacht. As a matter of fact, I've already written it up that if I make a lot of money off this company, it goes into the foundation that helps people.
Well, good for you. You're a beautiful person for doing that. Go ahead.
Common sense. I'm an old guy. What am I going to do with the money?
Will you stay after just a little bit to talk to me about a couple ideas I have? And I really thank you for doing this and coming forward and talking about this.
You're welcome.